Vivekacūḍāmaṇiḥ. Let's start with the opening prayers and the opening prayers of the texts also. Hari Om. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryaṃ Karavāvahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vitvishāvahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Guru Sakshat Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Dayakaram Dayakaram Dantam Dharma Pravartakam Pranamami Dayanandam Madacharya Param. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Vasudevendra Yogindram Nattva Jnanapradam Gurum Mumukshunam Hitarthaya Tattvabodho Bhidiyate. Sarva Vedānta Siddhanta Gocharam Tamagocharam Govindam Paramanandam Satgurum Pranatosmyaham. So last time we had met, we had left with the prāṇamaya kośaḥ. Prāṇamaya kośaḥ. So we talked about the panchakoshas. Another model, again, to explain that Atma is beyond the koshas. Atma transcends the koshas. And the koshas, we understood, are levels of error we commit with regard to I. So when I say I am fat, I am thin, I am beautiful, I am ugly, then the error is what? I identify with the annamaya kosha, stula shariram. And when I say I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I identify with the physiological functions, pranamaya kośaḥ. So we saw this pranamaya kośaḥ, different types of pranas are there. Prana is a broad term, but there are 5 vital airs. So we had seen that last time. The pranamaya kośaḥ consists of all these things. And there is a verse in Vivekacūḍāmaṇiḥ 166, we had left it at that. There, Adi Shankaracharya says that Atma cannot be the prāṇamayo kośaḥ. He says, naivātmāpi prāṇamayo vāyuvikāro gantā vāyuvadantarbahireṣaḥ yasmātkiñcitkvāpi na vettīṣṭamaniṣṭaṃ svaṃ vānyaṃ kiñcana nityaṃ paratantraha. So in the 166th verse of Vivekacūḍāmaṇiḥ, he says, he concludes the topic of pranamaya kosha by saying, this vital air sheath cannot be the self. Why? He says, it is just a modification of air, modification of vayu. Can air have any independent existence? Can it know the joy and sorrows of the body and the mind or other bodies and minds? No, it is nothing. It is inert. So here he says, even prana, the prana that makes all the physiology of the body function, which is responsible for inhalation, exhalation, circulation, digestion, all of these are because of the vital airs of prana. He says in this verse, it is dependent on the self. So air is actually pranic energy. When we talk about pranic healing and everything, pranic healing, we saw influences the mind, right? So there is truth to this pranic healing when one is feeling very weak, because we saw that prana is connected to karmendriya. So pranamaya kosha also consists of the powers of the organs of action. What powers the organs of action? Prana. So when prana is weak, then organs of action will naturally be weak. So this prana, he says, cannot be Atma. It is born of the total rajas guna of all the elements. We'll see that later in Tattvabodha. But because it is the nature of coming and going and changing, can it be Atma? No. Yasmātkiñcitkvāpi na veti, ishtam va anishtam. Prana cannot know anything. It does not know ishtam, what is desirable. It doesn't know what is anishtam, what is undesirable. It doesn't recognize pain, neither does it recognize pleasure. It is not self-conscious entity. So he says, svaṃ vānyaṃ ka kiñcana nityaṃ paratantraha. It is dependent on other factor to function. Dependent on what? You need food and water as fuel for the prāṇamaya kośa. Food and water fuel the prāṇamaya kośa. And yogis, when we talk about, some yogis go without food, and for a while they can last without water. They have been able to tap the prana in the ether, the prana in the universe. So they're able to live from the prana. They say that, no, they've mastered the prana, so they can stop their heartbeat at will. They can stop their digestion at will. This is mastery over prāṇamaya kośa, the ability to regulate your digestion, circulation, inhalation, exhalation. Some can even stop their heartbeat for a length of time and survive. So all of this is a possibility, but he says prāṇamaya is not Atma. Atma is not prāṇamaya kośa, because prāṇamaya is dependent on Atma for its existence. Now we move down one layer further to manomaya kośa. Why is it given in this order? Why annamaya, prāṇamaya, manomaya, vijñānamaya, ānandamaya? Because we have to understand levels of subtlety. Shastra always moves from what you can see and perceive, the grossest, to the most subtle. So we see Annamaya Kosha is the most gross. It is something that is perceptible. Prāṇamaya is less gross. It is not so perceptible. And the next kosha, which is manomaya kosha, is imperceptible. We cannot see it. We can recognize it. Atma as Sakshi can recognize manomaya kosha, but we cannot perceive it with our senses. So always we move in levels of subtlety. Understanding subtlety in Shastra means it is more pervasive. So what is more pervasive than Prāṇamaya? Manomaya kośaḥ. And here Adi Shankaracharya in Vivekacūḍāmaṇiḥ spends so much time on this kosha. Because why? This is where we have problems. We don't have problems any other kosha so much. Manomaya is where the suffering is felt, where the sorrow is felt, where unhappiness is sensed. So it is called the mental sheath. From verses 167 to 183 of Vivekacūḍāmaṇiḥ, he spends for this. We are only going to see a few today, but first of all, in Tattvabodha, what does the author say? Manomayaḥ kośaḥ kaha manaśca jñānendriyapañcakaṁ militvā yo bhavati sa manomayaḥ kośaḥ. He says in the Tattvabodha, this manomaya kosha, what is this manomaya kosha? He says, jñānendriya. So it contains the 5 sense powers. It is not the sense organs. We have to understand. Sense organs are located where? Ears are on the physical body. They are called golakas. They are locations for the sense powers. So if suppose I lose an eye, the sense power, the golaka, so when we go blind, the eye is still there. Lose an eye meaning the eye is still there, but I go blind in the eye. The golaka is there, but the power is invested in where? In the manomaya kosha. The power is invested, if you go back to Sukshma Shariram, it is invested in the subtle body. So eyes can still be there, but the power ceases to function. Ears can still be there, but the power ceases to function. So he says the power of the senses is in this manomaya kośaḥ. And manaśca. Manaśca means the thinking capacity. So there are, different models of this. Here, Manomaya Kosha, we'll see Adi Shankaracharya, Vivekacūḍāmaṇiḥ, what he really explains as the mind. It's very interesting what he says. But in Tattvabodha, we have two aspects of mind. Manaha, Buddhi is mentioned. In other texts, you find Manaha, Buddhi, Ahankara, Chittam, four aspects. It is all we have to understand different thinking capacity, different thought forms. So when we talk about Manaha, it is more about the emotional you, more about the desiring you. So Manaha aspect is where we have issues in life. That aspect is what is constantly fluctuating, constantly changing, and we cannot grasp it. Like Arjuna says in the Gita, oh Lord, it is as difficult to control as the wind. I can't do it. But Bhagavan says, if you remember, recall, you can do it because it is abhyasa. Through practice, you can manage your mind. Through detachment, dispassion, you can manage your mind, objectivity. So let us see, what is this? Manomaya kośaḥ, 167th verse of Vivekacūḍāmaṇiḥ. Adi Shankaracharya points this out to be the most important kosha, because it is the biggest place we commit errors, the cause for all our difficulties in life. He says, jñānendriyapañcakaṁ manaśca manomaya syāt kosho mamaham iti vastu vikalpahetuhu sanyadi bheda kalana kalito baliyan saha tatpurva kosham abhipurya vijrumbhateya. So again, the definition he gives first. What is this? Manomaya kosha. Prāṇamayo kosha has 10 organs. So the powers of the 5 organs of action and the 5 pranas, vital airs. Manomaya has 6 organs, 6 instruments. The mind and 5 sense organs of knowledge. So he starts with this. So what does he say in this verse? He says, the organs of perception and the mind form the manomaya kosha, which is the sole cause of what? The I thought. The I and mind sense. I and mind. Whole of life is I and mind. And because of I and mind, what happens? I divide the world into two. I, mine. In fact, if I say the I sometimes goes into mine, the mind becomes I, because what happens to mine happens to I as well. So I suffer with mine. But I also have another thing, which is others. So I, mine, others. So in fact, he says in this verse, this mind is the most powerful thing. It is endowed with the faculty of creating differences, Vedas in the world. All the differences we see, where are the differences? Here. In fact, it's only notion. We are not so different from each other. Even the physical body is related, same. Earth to earth, ashes to ashes, same 5 elements. All our physical bodies are connected through this order, physical order, biological order, chemical order. So he says that this mind, what is this mind? Vastu vikalpa hetuhu. This manomaya kosha is the sheath, which is the cause for dvaita, for duality. This sheath means this is the mistake I make on this level where I split the world up. I, mine, and everything else. And because my mind splits the world up, what happens? I become a victim of external forces. I become a victim of circumstances. And I go up and down with what happens externally. He says, Kosho mamaham iti. The sense of I and mine are what is responsible for the diversity of what we perceive. It is all because of this kosha. I divide the world to not me. So we say I and not me. And because of this, what happens? I become attached to not me. I don't understand that is also me. So I develop attachment to not me as well. And because of attachments to anything not me, attachment, we have to understand, can be positively seen and negatively, right? When attachment means you are dependent on something external for your happiness. That is my understanding of attachment. Attachment means whatever object or person or situation external to you is there, your happiness is dependent on that situation changing or not changing. Generally, we don't want happy situations, we don't want to change. Unhappy situations, we want to change. But both reveal my attachment because I am dependent on external for my happiness, right? So here, what is the problem? He says, because you already split the world now. I and the situation external to me, I and the object external to me. And because I have this, desire arises. Desire arises because of ignorance, avidya. Once I don't know that there is only one, that everything is me alone, I am the nature of pure consciousness, Atma. What is there to desire if everything is I? But because the mind splits this and makes this dichotomy, then I go after this all my life. I will go after this, I go after that, and I become attached to things. And what is the natural consequence of attachment? It will be sorrow. Anything that you invest with the I, anything that becomes mine, there will consequently be sorrow. We can't help it because that mine is always changing. I am myself changing. The mind is also changing. How can we maintain the same situation that creates happiness for us throughout our lives? We don't find we can. So, because I identify with external world, that I transfer to things that I love. So we call that raga, binding desire, things that I love. I transfer that I thought into those things. And then whatever happens to those things, that I gets also affected by it. So here Adi Shankaracharya says, look at the life. See, your level of involvement with the other is only due to your I thought. That I thought, and where is the I thought? Manomaya kośaḥ. That's why he's saying. So anything happening to external to another person is happening to me, and the consequence, the pain of loss is difficult to bear, right? Anything you're attached to, pain of loss is difficult to bear. And sometimes as I said, negative attachment, sometimes we can't get rid of things we want to lose. That's another attachment. Something is a source of great unhappiness for me, but I'm not able to get rid of it. I want to, like a headache. You have a constant migraine and you want to get, but you have to, it's always there with you. You've taken everything, tried all therapies, but you can't get rid of the migraine. So this is, again, we see the same theme coming out in Gita and all the texts. The two culprits of disturbance of mind are raga and dvesha. Likes and dislikes have the capacity to disturb you in life and keep you always seeking, which you don't want. Yesterday, whoever attended the Gita class, we saw it is not really the sort we want, it is freedom from seeking. We're not really going after what we think. We think that when that desire gets fulfilled, I'll get that object of desire, or I'll remove something which giving me unhappiness, I will feel happy. That is why we go after things. But in fact, the truth is, what I really love is freedom from seeking. In the fusion of subject of the sought and the seeker, there is Advaita, non-duality. In that fusion, there is this Shanti vritti in the mind. We saw that the mind becomes peaceful, it becomes calm. Self reflects in the mind in a peaceful, calm mind. And the self reflecting in that mind is what we call santosha, what we call contentment, what we call happiness, what we call peace. Everybody wants peace of mind, but we are going after pieces to discover real peace. So he says here, Baliyam. Baliyam means the mind is very powerful. Very powerful. How do we understand that? You have to ask, am I in control of my mind, or is the mind in control of me? That is the power of the mind. Am I the slave of my thoughts, or are the thoughts my slave? Generally, we are a slave to our thoughts. How do we know we're a slave to thoughts? The symptom of slavish living is when the thought comes, I act. Thought comes, I act. I don't even question. Is this the right? What is the consequence of this action? I don't question my projections. I take my projections to be real. Whatever my mind is projecting, this person, suppose somebody just turns in the road, I'm walking past somebody I know, they just turn the head as I pass. My projection immediately starts. They don't like me. What have I done? Have I done something wrong? Have I said something wrong? How do we know that person has got something else in the mind? They're probably thinking, oh, I have to get that chili for my casserole today or my soup today. I didn't get the chili. And then their mind goes somewhere and the eyes go somewhere else. We don't question our projection. So we are not suffering actually because of anything external. We are suffering because of the mind. When one is a slave to this manomaya kośaḥ, then all the thoughts have power over me. I get affected by the thoughts, and the emotional self takes the person for a ride. Again, I take my emotions also to be real. The reality that we give to our thoughts and emotions is what he says here, kalitaha kalanat. He says, kalitaha kalanat samyadi bheda. I see the thoughts as different. I see the world as different. Kalitaha means endowed with relationship, association, connection with all different names and forms. We'll see in the next verse beautifully, he says, the mind is related to everything, names and forms. And this is what we have for our life to function, right? So as soon as I wake up, when I'm asleep, that's why I'm asleep, because relating is painful. Although life is about relation, Swami Dayananda used to say, life is nothing but relationship. It is all about relating alone. You have to relate to objects, situations, people. But the actual relating is the pain because we don't know how to relate really. Either we are very strongly drawn to something or we're strongly repelled by something. We don't relate objectively. So samyadi bheda means I'm bombarded by differences in names and forms and functions. Some I reject, some I accept. But my mind is not objective to the world. The world, in fact, has no power to disturb me. It is manomaya kośa, my involvement with the manomaya kośa, my lack of understanding of the reality of manomaya kośa. That is where the problem arises. So the mind, what does it do? It's the mind actually that registers your experiences of the world. The world is just given. That is Ishvara Shrishti. But what do I react to? I don't really react to outside. I react to what my mind has told me inside, right? I react to what is in my mind. I'm not reacting to actually outside. So Shastra says you don't actually live in an external world. You live in an inner world, and which has registered the experience, and you dwell in this inner world. We are all absorbed by our inner world, and we believe our inner world. And this is where Adi Shankaracharya is asking through this verse, question, is the inner world as true as you think it is? Tattvabodha kosham. He says, this manomaya kosha, it pervades this prāṇamayo kosha as well, because it is next in pervasion. Abhipurya, it is question this manomaya kosha, question the thinking, question what you are really experiencing. Is it what is reality, objective reality, or is it something subjective? So this is a very important kosha to understand. Yaha, he says, yaha manomaya vijrimbate. This manomaya kosha stands out powerfully among all the koshas. Why? He says in the next verse, very beautiful analogy he gives in the next verse, how the mind functions in our external world and in the dealings. He says, panchendriyai panchabhireva hotrabhihi prachiyamano vishaya jayadharaya Jajvalyamano bahuvasanendhanaihi manomayagnir prapancham. So Trishtup meter, so a bit of a difficult meter, but he says here, these organs that we have, the 5 sense organs, he likens to the priests, hotravihi. This sacrificial priests, when you see these yajnas, you see these homas, havans, there are sacrificial priests, and what do? They keep offering, swaha, agne, swaha, and all the swaha. So he says the 5 sense organs are the sacrificial priests. And what do? They feed these 5 sense organs, they feed the numerous desires in the manomaya kosha. They fuel with the fire. So the fire is likened to manomaya kosha. This fire of manomaya kosha is fed with the sense experiences. So the sense experiences, the sense perceptions, the organs are the priests. And they are feeding this mind with the sense objects and experiences of the world. Very beautiful. And this mental sheath, manomaya kosha, burns in this world, this world of various phenomena. And I keep the sense objects, keep the fire alive. So he says, he explains here what the use of the mind is and what is happening in our life through a very beautiful example. Panchendriyani, which means these 5 sense powers, offer panchavishayaha. So the 5-fold sense organs, we know eyes are a pair of sense organs, ears, tongue, nose, skin. These are all the sense powers that we have for the external world. They are the officiating priests, hotrabhihi. And what do? When they say swaha, they offer name and form and color, swaha, sounds, swaha, taste, swaha, touch, swaha, smell, swaha. All the world of sensory experiences they offer to the manomaya kosha. So he says here that manomaya kosha is manomayagni. It is a fire and it burns us. He says vishayajya dharaya prachiyamanaha. It burns us because it is nourished by the flames of sense experiences. So the more sense experiences I have, the flames are going to get higher and higher, more flagrant flames. They rise in more sense experiences I have. And the more sense experiences I feed, what happens? Mind gets agitated. By feeding the fire, do we see it coming down? We see it getting worse, right? It gets worse. So this is a very important thing to understand. By feeding the fire of the mind with desire after desire after desire, what happens? More agitation of mind starts. The flames start rising higher, and sometimes they dim down. They dim down when the desire is not so much. So dim flame is when the desire is not so strong. But sometimes the fire is very, very powerful because the binding desires are offered. We cannot blame the sense organs. They're just officiating priests. What is it actually that is happening? Bahu vasanendhanaihi jajvalyamanaha, he says. It burns brilliantly because you're not just adding the sense experience. What do you add along with the sense experience? Because in havans, if you note, if any of you have done this havan or homa, you add very flammable stuff to it. So it goes up more. So it is not just ghee that's added. There's so many other flammable things that you add. Samagri, havan samagri we call. So you put that as well. And then it starts. What is the samagri for this manomaya kosha havan? It is your vasanas, he says. Your vasanas that you have come with makes the fire burn brilliantly, even worse. So why vasana and sense experience work together? Because sense experience by themselves cannot make such huge fire. Your reaction to sense experience is what makes the fire big. Vasanas are our reactions to sense experiences. Vasanas that we have cultivated either in this janma or we have brought from Purva Janma are the ones that the flammable samagri for this havan. And what are vasanas? First of all, we have to understand what vasanas are. So we have a sense perception. Some sensory input comes from any of the five senses. But what does this manomaya kosha do with that? Is it okay? It just says, oh, this is a smell of jasmine. This is a smell of sewage. Okay, suppose I take that smell of jasmine I get. What does manomaya kosha do? Oh, I love that smell. What a fragrance. Already you're trapped because you labeled that smell as good, lovely smell. When you label it fragrance, lovely smell, you will always have the opposite reaction. So then you smell the sewage. Oh, I hate this smell. What a stink. I can't stand it. This is called vasana development. And if you keep smelling jasmine, you develop a vasana, you want the jasmine smell. You'll buy jasmine, you want the jasmine in your house. That is called vasana. Repeatedly liking something, developing a habit towards it, that is called vasana. Very difficult to eradicate because you already got it then. So we see this in children, when they're young, they have certain inclinations for something. One child, suddenly it takes a liking to peanut butter. Oh, I love peanut butter, but I hate broccoli. I don't want broccoli. I hate. So as children, you see these likes and dislikes developing very strongly. And that's where parenting becomes important because important to, teach the child to neutralize this intense hate and love. Because intense hate and love is what is cause for disturbing the mind, he says here. So your vasanas reacting to the sense objects, sense experience, keep the fire of manomaya going. And what does the mind also do? It judges and labels the sensory inputs. So depending on the person, because some person may like holding a snake in the hand. I saw recently a clip. There was a man with snakes all over his body. He loved it. He said, I love the feel of the snake skin on my body. But do other people like that? Who would, generally, if I put a snake around someone's neck, they will run. So likes and dislikes vary, but that we have vasanas, various vasanas for various things, doesn't vary. All human beings are a bundle of vasanas alone. What defines you as an individual? Only your vasanas, right? Otherwise, we're not different from other people. Our minds define us and separate us, my own vasanas, my likes and dislikes. So if you like something, what happens? You want to experience it again. When you start liking something, developing a like towards something, you want repeat experience, that is fuel into the fire. That will make the mind more flagrant. Because if you don't get that experience, there's disturbance. Other way, if you don't like something, you want to avoid it, then what happens? Already you're putting more fuel into the fire, disturbance. Because you don't like it. Don't like, disturbance. Like, disturbance, you're adding fuel to the fire of disturbance. Manomaya kośaḥ. So this manomaya kośaḥ, we have to be very careful in handling because if we are aware of it, if we understand what is happening, we will see that we don't label this is good, this is bad, this is nice, this is not nice, this is cold, I don't like, this is warm, I like. All this dichotomy, duality in life is because of this mind labeling this way and that way. And the whole world of dual experiences, because I have to go through pleasant, unpleasant. And where is pleasant and unpleasant experienced? Is it external responsible for pleasant, unpleasant? Now you can see all here alone. My reaction to the external, I call pleasant. My reaction to external, I call unpleasant. So I repeatedly go after things that create pleasant reactions, and I avoid things that create unpleasant reactions. And this is the whole life is this yajna that we're doing. So he says here, like the whole life is this mano yajna, the agni that we're feeding, the fuel you're feeding of love and hate, constantly reacting to external. You are keeping the fire alive, and that fire keeps you always in disturbance in life, not content. Peace comes when what? The fire is calm. When do we get peace? Is there a possibility of peace in waking state? Yeah, meditation gives peace. That's why people close their eyes. See, that's one way of getting peace. You close your eyes to sensory perception, then you stop the fire being fed. The fuel is not there, but then you have to keep your eyes shut all the time. Can we live with our eyes shut and our ears closed and our nose? None of our senses working. Some people, some yogis can do that. But what's the point? You just be like a rock, like we see, that is where we are different. We are different. Meaning Vedanta talks about jnanam. Yogis have great capacity. We don't say their samadhi, everything is not a small, it's not a small thing to go into samadhi. But what do they do to get that peace of mind? They shut themselves off to the external world. So you see in many of the Puranas, the texts, all these sages, their anthills are growing around them. Their nails are like 5 meters long because their hair, they have no body consciousness. And people equate that to knowledge. That is not knowledge, because when you wake up the yogi, generally in the stories, the first thing he does is curse because anger comes. So he's with the same stuff that he went into before samadhi. So going into samadhi, shutting off the external world, you will get peace because you have subdued the fire through force. You have subdued that fire by shutting off the senses. But you cannot live in the world then. You have to go to forest and sit like that until your body drops off. Is it what Vedanta says? No. For us, it's open-eyed understanding. Living in the world, yet not allowing the fire to become a huge flame so it disturbs us in life. That is knowledge. Knowledge can keep the fire peaceful, can keep the fire calm, which means I feed the fire when I want it to be fed, not that when automatically it gets fed. I tell the priests when I want the fire to rise. I tell the priest when I want the fire to die down. I am in control of the manomaya kosha, the fire. Not the fire is out of control, it's on its own. So we can have, with knowledge, we can have open-eyed manomaya kosha management, or we find another experience that we all have as human beings in deep sleep. Where is manomaya in deep sleep? You get a temporary break from the burning in deep sleep. That's why we love deep sleep, because there's no fire in deep sleep. The fire is not fully out though. It is still dormant, because when I wake up in the morning, what happens? I start feeding it again. Om Swaha, sound Swaha, taste Swaha, touch Swaha. So I start feeding it. And here Adi Shankaracharya says, Manomaya Agnihi Prapancham Dahati. The whole world is being burnt by Manomaya Kosha. Everybody's Manomaya Kosha is burning the whole Jagat, Prapancham. It burns the world, it burns every human being. How does it burn? Dahati means burn. How does it burn you? With worry, with anxiety, with all sorts of things we don't want. That is called burning. Sorrow, we don't want it. If we keep feeding the Manomaya Kosha, definitely there will be all of the negative emotions that we don't want. Anger, anxiety, all of this comes along. That's why he says it is burning the entire world. Here, prapancha means people. It doesn't, objects and even animals are not, bothered, right? Why are animals not bothered? Because they don't have free will. They are living out programmed their lives. They live out programmed lives and then they die off. So they're in that way, they're not bothered by this. But what do? We have free will. We allow the manomaya kosha fire to be fed. It is our free will. We think there's no free will here, but there is. We don't use it. Then we die off kripanaha, misers. If we don't use our free will, which is a gift from human beings, then a gift from Ishvara for human beings, then I die off without knowing. So here, burning means it's not a physical fire that burns, but mentally, this fire, manomaya kosha, will burn if you feed it more and more. Feeding it with your vasanas, feeding it. And what is this burning? It is called samsara tapaha. This is samsara. Entire world is burning with samsara. So because of the free will, the samsara, this free will, I get burned. So in the next verse, he says, we'll just finish with this next verse. The mind, now he goes along to say the mind is the main cause for samsara, this life of becoming. So samsara means life of becoming. He says, nahyastya vidya manasotirikta mano manohya vidya bhava bandha hetuhu tasmin vinashte sakalam vinashtam vijrumbhitesmin sakalam vijrumbhate. Apart from this mind, there is no ignorance, meaning the mind is avidya. Here it is symbolic. Mind, not really. Mind is the seat of ignorance. Where else are you ignorant? You're not ignorant in your left hand or your right toe. Ignorance is only in the mind. And because of the ignorance of the mind, there is bondage of samsara. Samsara is bondage. Why is it considered a bondage? Because you're tied down and limited always by everything else. That is called bondage. Your nature is limitlessness. Shastra reveals that your nature is freedom, which is already you are already free, muktaha. That is, in many of the texts it is said again and again. But the bondage is because manomaya kosha keeps you bound to differences we've seen, bound to desires, bound to feeding that fire. But he says here, when the mind is destroyed, everything else is destroyed. You have to understand that. What is it? Can we really destroy the mind? We have to understand what he means by destruction. He says, when the mind is destroyed, everything is destroyed. When the mind manifests, everything manifests. So very interesting. Manohi avidya bhava bandha hetuhu. This mind, manomaya kośaḥ, is the cause, hetu for the bondage of samsaric life. It will always keep you feeding the desires. You see, the fire, if you keep the fire going, you will always be doing, getting, doing, getting, die off. Another body, doing, getting, doing, getting, die off. Another body. So this desire feeding and getting the results of the yajna will keep you going. So he says here, when the mind, notice, when the mind alone is there, problems are there. That's why we like sleep, because where are the problems in deep sleep? Mind is dormant. In deep sleep, there is no sense of lack. There is no sense of smallness. There is no sense of victimhood. There is no sense of anything in deep sleep. So when the mind wakes up, then you wake up and manasaha atirikta avidya nasti. This mind alone is ignorance. Tasmin vinashte sakalam vinishtaha. When the mind is gone, then everything is gone. What does it mean when the mind is gone? We have to understand when the mind is falsified, when you see it is mithya, it is a dependent reality, not you. You are satyam, you are that one truth. Trikalepi tishtati iti satyam, you are the one that exists in the past, exists now, and will continue to exist in the future. That is the definition of satyam. When you recognize your satyam, the mind cannot bother you. The fire is out. The fire is already out, which doesn't mean the mind is destroyed, but it is seen as false self. So you don't keep feeding the fire. It is a placid mind. It is a quiet mind. Sakalam vinashtam, he says here, entire samsara is destroyed. Well, when the mind is badita, when it is seen as false, samsara also goes. Asmin vijrimbhate, sakalam vijrimbhate. When the mind comes out, when it is manifest, then everything else is born. That's very interesting because when the mind is dormant, the whole world is as good as non-existent, right? Where is Jagat for you? Is as good as non-existent. But soon as you wake up, what happens? Jagat becomes existent, right? So whole Jagat becomes existent. So here he says it is the mind alone that you have to deal with in life. Everything else is actually secondary. Once you have manomaya kosha, when you become when you become a master of this manomaya kosha, you will become a master of yourself. So what, it's very interesting to see, when he says, when the mind comes out, all your problems come out. So what do we do in life? We actually distract ourselves to forget the mind. Everything we do is a distraction for the mind. The self-forgetting gives relief from samsara. So the self-forgetting is what we're all doing every day. As soon as we get up, go to work, we're forgetting self. Forgetting which self? Not Atma self. We want to forget that manomaya kosha, that manomaya kosha self. But ultimately, the question is, I have to remember myself one time or other, right? Ultimately, we all have to remember ourselves. And when I remember the self, I have to be happy with the self. The self I remember, that is called moksha. To be happy with yourself is moksha. So you don't have to forget yourself to be happy. You can remember yourself and be full and you can be happy. So I'll stop here for today because, he goes on for a lot of verses about the mind and very interesting verses. He explains this manomaya kosha, but he's given it, these 3 verses, he's given an idea of what the mind's use is and how we are feeding it, what we are doing, we are doing meaning using the free will. We don't even realize this is what is happening. Okay.